Hi, I'm Ron and welcome to PopScicle, where I talk about popular culture, science, and everything in between. In case you're new to this channel, I'm Ron. I'm a biology professor. I'm a biologist by training, but I'm also very immersed in popular culture, whether it's music, film, TV series, anime, RPGs, or what have you. And one of the things I love talking about, really, both in the classroom and outside, is combining popular culture with science and making science much more interesting. And that's really the goal of this particular YouTube channel. I'm glad that you're here. First of all, happy International Women's Month. We're celebrating that. We're celebrating all the women in the world. Um, and of course, in popular culture and in science, women have played a very, very significant role. And they are, of course, worth celebrating. And that's why for this entire month, I'll be devoting practically all of my episodes in this channel to women in popular culture and in science. For the first episode in that series, I'm going to talk about kick-ass anime women. Now, the word kick-ass, of course, can mean many different things. It can mean being very tough. So you can imagine right away the fighters, the warriors in anime, of which there are many. But it can also mean someone with a very, very strong conviction, very strong advocacy that she is fighting for. And that's something I believe constitutes being kick-ass in the world of anime or anywhere else for that matter. Because in this world where there's a lot of pressure to conform, it takes a lot to have conviction and to fight for your convictions. And so we'll have characters like those as well. For a while, I was really debating internally as to what to present on anime women. Could be, I mean, I could have said the best anime women, but then how do you define the best, right? And how do you compare apples and peaches? It's going to be quite difficult. So I decided to narrow it down just a bit into the kick-ass women. And I was also trying to determine if I was going to make this a top 10 list. But I thought that it would be better if I dissected the word kick ass or the categorization of it a bit further, and then just highlight certain anime characters that have really defined those categories. Okay, um, I guess it runs the risk of distilling these characters into categories or putting them in boxes, which are the categories. But it's just for the sake of convenience. It's just for the sake of making some sense of all these diverse characters. And of course, it's important to take note that there are a lot of overlaps among these very artificial categories that I will be uh, placing our characters in. You know, ultimately, I just wanted to highlight as many female characters as I could without necessarily limiting them to a top 10 list. And so I'm going to proceed now. Like I said, a kick-ass anime woman doesn't need to be a warrior, doesn't need to be out there fighting with superpowers or with super strength. There are many ways by which um, kick-assery can be expressed. They don't need to be literally kicking asses, although a lot of women in this list are exactly that. For example, I believe that, and of course, everyone who watches anime would know that there's a lot of very young people, young characters in anime who are driven by circumstance into doing things that you wouldn't normally expect someone that young to do. And that applies to mecha pilots a lot. Although most mecha pilots that we know are men or young men. Um, but there are a lot of female characters who are in their very young ages, so have shown a lot of conviction, whether it's conviction for a particular cause, conviction for adventure, conviction for an advocacy, conviction for love, also. Of course, there are several characters that I'm sure you've already thought of falling under this category. You may have thought of Yuki no Miyazawa from Karikano, a well-rounded character who starts off butting heads with Arima before, of course, it goes into a more romantic type of relationship. And she had a steely will that a lot of people resonated with and respected her for. Or you may have thought of Midori as Akusa from Keep Your Hands Off Aizuken, which is a very, very fun anime that came out last year. And we all know how much she loves manga and drawing anime and manga. And it was great how the series was able to capture all of that excitement and passion, uh, which is a form of kickassery, I would say, because she was really determined to go against the tide and go against circumstances to be able to do what she loves. But of course, there are two characters that I really think of in this particular very loose, admittedly very loose category of youth with conviction. And one is Rico from Made in Abyss, one of my favorite series from recent years. She's adorable. She has strength of will. She's adventurous. She's determined. She's passionate, and she's really willing to fight. She's really willing to go down there, literally, into the abyss to find what she's looking for. And she's a fascinating character who shows maturity beyond her age. And of course, we can't not discuss or talk about Emma from Promised Neverland. An intelligent, strategic character. If we're talking about someone who's more mature than her age would suggest, definitely Emma uh, it defines that, or is defined by that particular characteristic. And she's considered to be one of the geniuses in the Gracefield farm, and for many good reasons. And she's been showing that in the recent season of the anime. She's been growing a lot, but she still maintains that conviction that she has for humanity, basic humanity and compassion. And that's amazing to behold, despite all of the things that are going on around her, despite all the difficulties and all the death and all the evil acts that are being done upon her and her fellow children. She's still maintaining that conviction that people can work together. People and demons can work together, and there doesn't need to be a lot of killing. And that's very impressive for such a character. Like I said, a character doesn't have to be physically powerful for us to be able to say that she's kick-ass. There are a lot of characters who use their minds instead, whether as strategists and tacticians, or as scientists, or as engineers. Um, just mentioning engineers would probably make the old school anime fans think of Washu from Tenchi Muyo. One of the more fascinating characters, who also reminds us of one of the characters in the video game Chrono Trigger. Uh, that was a trope for a while, actually. An alien scientist or a mad scientist in an anime who is very quirky, and that makes her very interesting. Washu is one such character. Of course, Bulma from Dragon Ball is an inventor, is a genius when it comes to machines, and she's been helping the Dragon Ball team by devising all of these things that, for example, allow them to search for the Dragon Balls, and the fact that she was able to tame Vegeta is a big thing, right? We can't deny the strength of her personality and her will that allowed her to bend this wild, chaotic madman, Vegeta, to her will, and make him a family man, in essence, although, of course, not in the traditional sense of the word. But that's something that we have to salute Bulma for. If that doesn't make her kick ass, I don't know what will. Um, and then in Neon Genesis Evangelion, which I make no secret of as being my favorite anime series, and you can see that from my shirt, right? There are two characters who have shown their brilliance with in how they use their minds to get out of sticky situations. Um, who would not remember the episode where there's a virus that invades the Nerve headquarters and the Evangelion units, and Ritsuko Akagi, the resident scientist, the head scientist of Nerve, manages to solve that problem with the speed of her fingers and the speed of her mind and her steely conviction, which is something that we fans of Evangelion have always admired about her, despite her being a cold, distant character. And that that's part of her character, actually. Not all scientists are like that. Just to remind you, that's a stereotype for a lot of scientists, that they're cold and emotionless and not very warm. Um, but and Ritsuko shows that, really, and she's kind of frightening when it comes to how she distances herself from human emotion sometimes. But no one can deny how brilliant she is. Not only in this episode, I mean, that's the highlight, but then in other episodes as well. And of course, when we're talking about intelligent people in Neon Genesis Evangelion, we cannot not mention Misato, everyone's favorite military tactician. Um, Misato Katsuragi um, is amazing. There have been a lot of debates as to whether Asuka or Rei is the better character in Evangelion, but there are a lot of people who are piping up and saying no, it's actually Misato, and there are a lot of things that would help support that argument. She is also damaged, just like every other character in Evangelion. She has a lot of baggage, um, and sometimes she lets it get to her, but she is a brilliant tactician. A lot of the successes of the Evangelion team of Nerve can be attributed to her presence of mind and her creativity when it comes to tactics. A lot of the tactics that allowed the team to win against the Angels came from her. And of course, she's such a fun character. Whenever she gets drunk, uh, whenever she's called Shinji, whenever she interacts with Kaji, it's well, there's a lot of sad moments there as well, especially with regard to her relationship with Kaji. But all in all, she's such an amusing character and such a strong character also. We mentioned Asuka Langley a while ago, and I will keep on mentioning Asuka until the end of this video. If it's not obvious, she's one of my favorite characters of all time, and so it's pretty obvious where I am in the Asuka versus Rei debate. Although, having said that, Asuka is a character that's quite complex, and that's why she can fall under several categories. A lot of people would agree that she's one of the ultimate tsunderes in anime, right? The tsundere who's very much difficult to tame, difficult to interact with sometimes, because she's usually angry or pissed off, especially at men, before she warms up and softens a bit. And that's a trope. That's a trope in anime, which a lot of people find fascinating, which has actually been used in other genres as well, like romance series, the BL industry, for example. And Asuka is a good example of this, although it can be argued that she doesn't really soften up uh, considerably towards Shinji. Even at the end, she was quite angry at Shinji. And I'm talking about End of Evangelion, of course. But there are several other characters under this. Actually, there are many. But I'd like to talk about or mention Taiga Aisuka from Toradora, another classic tsundere, and the way her romance develops is a fascinating thing to see, and very touching. It's one of the most touching anime, actually, Toradora, and a big part of that was Taiga's transformation, which was not jarring, not jolting. It was true to her character. It was gradual. It was not all of a sudden. And so she maintained her integrity as a character, and her strength as a character. But there is one character who some people might argue is not actually tsundere, and in fact she predates the use of the term tsundere, meaning that she came out as a character and became popular as a character even before people started using the term tsundere. But there are many qualities that show her to be a tsundere, especially when you compare her to the other female characters in that anime, whereas all the other females are fawning over the lead male. She's having none of that. And in fact, whenever she goes to her school, she ends up fighting with the guys who are trying to court her. And it's that makes for one of the funniest sequences in anime, whenever she goes to the school and fights with the guys just to drive them off. And I hope that you already know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Akane Tendo from Ranma One Half. Uh, every other female and the other female characters are fascinating. Okyo and Shampoo and all the rest, especially Shampoo, who holds a special place in my heart. Um, they're fawning over Ranma, male Ranma. Akane is not. But of course, you know that there's some romantic tension between them, which is one of the most amusing things about it. That's why a lot of people, including myself, are rooting for them to get together. Yes, I love Shampoo and I love the dynamic between her and Ranma. But ultimately, the end game is Ranma and Akane. And a big part of that is Akane takes none of his nonsense. And in fact, one of the running gags in Ranma One Half is Akane kicking Ranma to the sky, and he's doing that pose, right? I'm sure that sounds familiar to you. And whether or not we label her as Shundere, and in fact, I also consider her to be a warrior. She is a martial artist. She embodies that strength of character and strength of will that just needs a bit of, you know, uh, breaking to show the vulnerability. She does show vulnerability toward Ranma rarely, but of course that's the end game, and it's touching to see those soft tender moments between her and Ranma, but she still maintains that toughness that she never really loses. Now, of course, when we're talking about tough, kick-ass anime women, there's a particular category that obviously fits this, aside from the warrior category, which I'll save for last, because there are a lot of female characters that I'd like to highlight in that category. There is this category of androids and cyborgs, of which there are several. There's one anime, which is Saber Marionette, which has many of them. You have the three leads, Lime, Cherry, and Bloodberry, and then you have the other ones, the villains who or anti-heroes, and there are many of them. Of course, Lime takes center stage as the lead among the three, and the one that really um, does a lot that drives the drama of the series. If you haven't tried Saber Marionette yet, give it a try. It's really a good anime, and the characters are really well developed. Of course, when we talk about cyborgs and androids in anime, we can't not mention Alita from Battle Angel Alita, although she's known more for manga and the live action movie. There was an OAV, I believe, that came out that was about Alita or cover or was based on the manga. Android 18 from Dragon Ball, right? Uh, Kick ass, definitely tough, no nonsense. Has she ever smiled in the anime? I don't remember. Of course, Krillin gets to marry her and they have a child together. As to how, I don't know. Yeah, anime, right? But she's always been one of the best warriors in the team. And it's always fascinating, almost always fascinating when a character starts off being a villain or an anti-hero or something like that, and then ends up being one of the you know uh, biggest assets of the heroic team. Although of course in Dragon Ball that's the usual thing that happens to villains like Majin Buu, Vegeta, Piccolo. They start off being villains and then they eventually become part of the team, and that's I guess the charm of Goku. He gets to pull people to his side. I mean, in some of the recent series, I believe he even gets to, to convince Frieza to team up with him. Although Frieza doesn't really become a hero, or I mean a good guy. He has his own reasons for joining up. But anyway, yeah, Android 18 is one of the other amazing kick-ass cyborg slash android women in anime. But of course, the one who takes the top spot, the highlight in this particular category, is none other than Motoko Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell. I don't think I need to explain that choice. Toughness, skills, uh, uh, tactics, it's all there, right? And yeah, we would be hard pressed to think of a tougher, better cyborg woman in anime who can really literally kick ass and do other things beside that. I wanted to give attention to particular characters who I had some difficulty putting in a particular category, although I ultimately put them in the magic and aliens category, basically the spec fic or fantasy slash sci-fi category. Although of course a lot of the other women, particularly in the warriors category, which I'm saving for last, will also fall into this category. But like I said, there are overlaps. Okay, but I wanted to mention here three particular characters. Uh, um, these are from older series. By older, I mean 90s. So a lot of younger people watching this may not be familiar with them, but they are definitely kick-ass, and so they're worth mentioning. From Elazard, we have Ifurita, who's a demoness. Um, it depends on what particular Elazard series you watch, whether it's a TV series or the OAV. Uh, in one, she's basically really an evil demon. Uh, in others, and here I'm just trying to get this from memory. It's been a long time since I've watched Elazar. There's one particular series or OAV, I'm not sure which one it is, where she does end up being where she is shown to be a tragic character, and and she and as the romantic lead also. And Ifurita is an all-powerful demoness with amazing powers and strength. Uh, that's my favorite version of Ifurita, of course, because I always love when there's a lot of dimension shown to a character. Here she is, an all-powerful demoness who's trapped by circumstance and time, uh, but also shows vulnerability because of her love for the lead character, and that transformative uh, element to her character, her character development, is what adds that layer of excellence to that character arc and to that character itself, making her more than a one-dimensional villainess or anti-hero or what have you. Give Elazar a try. It's one of the more fascinating isekai. It's an old isekai where several characters from Earth are transported to a magical world, and each one of them gets a power of some sort. It's fun, and it's the world building is great. Speaking of 90s anime and harem anime, similar to Ranma, and harem anime were a big thing in 90s anime. Um, we have to mention Tenchi Muyo. I mentioned it earlier. Tenchi is the center of the harem, and there are so many women, particularly alien women, who are trying to get his attention and get his affection and his love. The one that stands out among all of them, well, I did mention Washu a while ago. She stands out for several other reasons, being very quirky. But the one who really shines in this particular series is Ryoko, who's one of the more powerful women in this list. She can do so many things, including flight, and if I'm not mistaken, she can shoot out beams. I might be wrong. I haven't watched Tenchi Muyo in a long time. Yes, she's very hot-headed a lot of times. She gets into a lot of fights with Ayeka, which are some of the more fun moments. But she has very soft, tender moments also, particularly with Tenchi, of course, with Ryuoki. And, she can't be called a tsundere because while very tough and no nonsense also, she basically melts into a puddle when in the presence of Tenchi. She doesn't make much pretension at loving Tenchi, and that makes her very multidimensional character and very kick-ass. Whenever she gets into a fight, you can expect her to win, and it's always a joy to see her fighting. Uh, well, verbally fighting Ayeka and physically fighting whatever enemy the anime throws in her way. I would also like to mention Didlit from Record of Lodoss War. When Record of Lodoss War came out, she became one of my favorite characters because I love fantasy. I play D&D, and as you probably know, Record of Lodoss War is based on D&D games. Didlit is an elf who wields magic, but is a good fighter also. And she's very sweet, but there's also a sort of tsundere quality to her when it comes to her relationship with Parn, at least at the start. Uh, uh, but she's never offensive. She's actually a very gentle character, and in fact, I love her so much. Loved her so much that I named one of my dogs after her. But when it comes to fantasy anime, of course, we cannot neglect to highlight Lina Inverse from Slayers. Slayers is an oldish anime again. It came out in the 90s, but again, it's sword and sorcery. If you like that type of anime, then you should definitely try to watch Slayers. It's also absurd and extremely funny. It's so funny. Especially Lina Inverse, who was voiced by Megumi Hayashibara, one of the all-time great seiyuu in anime. And she is an ultra powerful sorceress with all sorts of spells that will put Doctor Strange and maybe even Scarlet Witch to shame. Um, a lot of fire-based spells. I forget the name of her signature spell. I'll type it down here. You're seeing it now when editing this video. But yeah, the way she screams out her spells, her relationship with her band, her small band, um, it's all amazing. And again, she's one of the funniest characters ever. But behind all of that humor is an ultra powerful sorceress who can probably go toe to toe with some of the strongest characters in anime. And then there are certain anime characters that are kick-ass because of one singular thing that they do that really drives the plot forward and changes everything in the anime. And while there are probably quite a number of such anime characters, the one that really comes to mind and the one that I'd like to highlight and honor in this episode is none other than Lin Min Mei, the ultimate anime diva. Who else could say that just with the power of her music, she was able to stop an intergalactic war? It's Lin Min Mei, right? In Macross. And since then, we've seen the popular trope evolve, the popular trope of music saving the world, which is not limited to anime. We've seen this in other sci-fi creations as well. But we can really say that it was Lin Min Mei who started this trope, and if it's not kick ass stopping a war with your music, I don't know what is. And so Lin Min Mei deserves to be in this list definitely, despite her very gentle demeanor. And finally, we get to the main category, which I believe is really what you end up thinking about when thinking about kick-ass women in anime. And these are the warrior women, and there are many examples of such women. Claymore is an anime that presents all women warriors uh, who have tragic pasts and tragic futures. It's one of the saddest anime that you can watch actually. Um, and then you have several others taking a lead role in their respective anime. Of course, Utena from Revolutionary Girl Utena, one of the quirkiest, weirdest, but most beautiful anime out there. Utena is a strong character, fascinating character also. So, and one of the most well animated. I think she's one of the most memorable characters when it comes to visuals, at least. In Res Zero, you have several female characters. Rem, of course, is anyone who loves Res Zero would know how much conviction Rem has. Her conviction about her love, and she's a kick-ass demon with an amazing weapon, that spiked ball at the end of a chain, and she's a great fighter also. She's willing to sacrifice so much of herself. Um, does that make her sort of wuss? Oh, well, I guess in a way, yeah. But that shows strength of conviction and strength of love, and we cannot really fault her for that, right? From Kill la Kill, there are several strong female characters. Of course, the lead character is Ryuko Matoi, and we can't not mention her when it comes to strong warrior women. And she's also very hot-headed, and she has a fascinating weapons. One of the most memorable weapons in anime, right? Anime mentors like Izumi Curtis from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and Genkai from Yu Yu Hakusho should also be mentioned, of course, because they trained our characters or the ultimate warriors. A lot of them are men, however. And of course, these characters wouldn't have become as good as they did if not for these mentors. But there are three particular characters that I would like to mention, that I would like to highlight in this category. And it should be no surprise who these are. One is a character that I'm wearing right now. And I did tell you that I'm going to mention her again. And this is, of course, Soryu Asuka Langley from Neon Genesis Evangelion. A lot of people hate Asuka because she's such a hot-headed, vicious character who's barely nice to Shinji or anyone else for that matter. But she's definitely layered and complex, and she has a lot of reason for being like that. She's trying to protect herself because she has lost so much. She has lost her mother. She has lost everyone around her. Basically, she feels alone all the time, and so she's not used to having people around her. And there are very, very few things in anime that could match the epicness and the kick-assery of what Asuka does when she has to fight against that that I don't know how many, I don't remember how many, those prototype new Eva units that were trying to kill everyone in Nerve, and she single-handedly fought off all of them except that she ran out of energy near the end. But she was the first one to show how the AT field could be used as a weapon, and she was so in the thrill of battle. You can see how much she was enjoying not only fighting off these things and showing off her prowess, and ultimately proving that she's the best pilot in terms of skill in fighting, but having something to fight for and having something to live for, which is protecting the people in Nerve. It's, I mean, just talking about it sort of brings tears to my eyes. Um, Whenever people compare Rey and Asuka, I always go back to saying, uh, uh, this you just need to watch this scene to see why Asuka is such a great character and why so many people love her despite her many flaws. Or, well, her flaws are part of it. Um, but yeah, this scene really shows everything that you need to know about Asuka. How she's a damaged character, but she just needed that push to remind herself of her worth and what she can do. It ultimately ends up tragically, that particular scene again, because she runs out of energy. I mean, her Eva unit. But what she does before that, unbelievably amazing and awesome. Now, the two other characters, of course, when we talk about kick-ass warrior women, we can't not mention Mikasa Ackerman from Attack on Titan. This makes her one of the newer or more recent anime characters. Need I say more? Anyone who has watched Attack on Titan would know how amazing a warrior Mikasa is. And you can argue that maybe aside from the other Ackerman, Levi, she's the best in the core. Um, she's shown how much skill she has as a scout with the equipment and with killing titans, and she's very stoic. She doesn't show a lot of emotion, but you can tell how much love she has for Eren, of course, but also for her friends, and that drives her conviction to be always better than she is. Um, and yeah, if this were just a ranking of strong women in terms of fighting skill, then Mikasa would actually be among the top characters, hands down. The last anime character that I would like to highlight in this category, and since this is the last category that I'm going to discuss in this video, overall in this video, and in fact, she's probably my favorite female character in anime, and I would have put her on top anyway, if this were a top 10. This is Satsuki Kiriwin from Kill la Kill. In terms of strength and skill, she's got all of that, but she's also got one of the best character development arcs in anime. Anyone who has watched Kill la Kill would know that she starts off being a very frightening, convincing villain who never smiles and is harsh to her subordinates also. And of course, is quite harsh, definitely, to Ryoko Matoi, our lead character. And and yet you can't. I don't think I ever hated her even when she was a villain. I always found her to be fascinating and multidimensional even as a villain. But then of course when it was revealed that she's actually not, well, she's anti-heroic, I suppose. She does things questionably, but her heart is in the right place. She wanted to save people, in essence. That shift from being a villain to being an anti-hero slash hero, actually, who has compassion and shows a strong um, desire to enact justice, and ultimately also to reconnect with her lost sister. That made her such a well-rounded, multidimensional, special character in anime. Kill la Kill is an amazing anime, definitely, and with great visuals and great comedic timing, and great dramatic moments, also great action sequences, and that's where Satsuki really shines. She's a brilliant fighter, but at the same time, as a character with her own character development, her arc, she's one of the top anime characters, I would argue. Um, you can't always pull off that shift from villain to hero uh, so smoothly, but Kill la Kill was able to do that, and she's just kick ass. It all boils down to that because of her character development and her fighting skills. She is an ultimate kick ass female character in anime. I'm sure that I missed out on several anime characters. Of course, I haven't watched each and every anime. I admit, and this will probably make me lose an audience, but I've never watched the Naruto series. And so that's why I didn't mention any of the characters. And I'm pretty sure there are strong female characters in that series. There are several in Bleach as well, which I did watch, but I wasn't able to finish it. So please feel free to comment below to share your own uh, choices for kick-ass anime women. But I hope that you did enjoy the list that I brought together here, and I hope that this will be a good start for us in celebrating International Women's Month, because there are so many women to celebrate, not only in real life but also in popular culture. So if you enjoyed that video and you would like to see more, please don't forget to subscribe to PopScicle so that you may be alerted to new content in the future. See you again next time.